One of the things that ends up happening is when we are seeking to end up sharing, we have the hope of touching the Spirit of God and the Spirit of God helping with the process so that there are topics that are abundant. And sometimes what ends up happening is when we move into a circumstance, and particularly when we haven't been using the equipment simply for this one circumstance, which is shooting videos where we're hanging with you, sometimes what ends up happening is by having used this equipment in other fashions that we get back here and everything ends up being a little, dare I say, difficult. And it's been really interesting this morning because what has ended up happening is we'd gone out and I had shot some video on location somewhere else, brought the equipment back, and all of a sudden the settings on the equipment are not what we are accustomed to. And so this morning we are in the process of fighting technology. We're hitting a button and it is operating differently than we expect. We hook things together, we think that we've got it down, and all of a sudden there is difficulty that is different than what we have experienced in the past. And is it because we're doing something different? Is it because when this traveled, it reset? Is it because we're using a different monitor on the camera? Is it because there's a different microphone or a different input to this? Not entirely sure, and we will end up pursuing this, and we will figure this out, and ultimately it will end up being fruitful, it will be helpful, and we will end up getting to the bottom of this. But I really think of what we're doing today technically, and it really reminds me that often when we are in pursuit of doing what God has for us to do, there are obstacles, there are difficulties, there are things that are not the way we would expect them to be. And I think that that's fair, and I think that that's okay. And I think that God wants a resilient people. He wants a people who are going to be able to take on the issues and the difficulties that are around us. And if you enter into a circumstance where what you have been doing has been okay, but that all of a sudden there is greater difficulty, it doesn't mean that God's not involved. It doesn't mean that the fluidity, the flexibility, and the call that is on you to become better at what you're doing is something that should shock you, should throw you, or should otherwise get in the way of what you're up to. Instead, God has his hand on his people on purpose. God continues to love you whether things are easy or whether things are difficult. God is with you whether or not your plans come to pass as you've put them together. Sometimes we depend on other people in order to put things together and they don't come through. And then we get disturbed, we get angry, we get emotional, and we otherwise get to a place where we have a problem with what's going on. None of this gets in the way of God being on the throne. None of this gets in the way of God continuing to accomplish his purpose and his intention for us. And sometimes God's intention and his purpose is going to end up working out, even if we don't like the process and the procedure that we need to go through for it. So if you're having technical difficulties, it's okay. If when you move into using equipment, it doesn't work precisely the way that you think it should work, there's a way around that. If there are other things that are happening that you need to do some research or you need to work on or you need to otherwise bring things together, it's going to be fine. And I really want to encourage you that simply because there's difficulty in part of what goes on, simply because the tools that we rely on are capable of frustrating us, simply because things are not what we're hoping they're going to turn into, in no way, shape, or form changes the fact that God is working in you, God is drawing you to himself, God is perfecting you, God is giving you the ability to overcome difficulty. And if other people are part of your process and they don't come through in the way that you hoped they would come through, that doesn't mean that God isn't working, but it does mean that God will ultimately make you a more resilient child of his, who can function and who can do well in other circumstances. And maybe today you have to figure out a way to work around things. That's okay. Maybe in a week we'll work things out in such a fashion whereby it'll be good, it'll be excellent, it'll come through, it'll be stable, and we won't have the problem that we have today. That's all perfectly acceptable. But you need, with your faith in the Lord, and you're walking with him, and you're being transformed and changed by him, you need to be in a place and in a position where he is going to end up being on fire for you, and you're going to be able to do whatever you need to do, even if the present age is getting in the way. Shalom.